2023, 2024 has been a banner year for Americans in Europe. Maybe the best year ever. You know what? When you consider the width and breadth of it all, it was the best year for Americans in Europe. I don't think we could debate that. But we always have to hedge a little bit in this business. We always have to apply a qualifier here or there. But it was. The list goes on and on. And I wrote that. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable what was accomplished by our players in the top flights, in the mid flights, in the lower flights of the European continent. So, I know the season's not quite over, but I'm going to do this show today because when these leagues end in a week or two, everything is going to shut down and we are going to be full in on Copa America and Euros. I promise you that. We're going to go, congratulations. All right, bring it on, because it's going to be at our doorstep. So I have to do it now. What I am going to do now, today, on the Soccer OG, check out the Soccer OG podcast, where all podcasts are available. I have a new one with Walker Zimmerman, World Cup starter for the U.S. men's national team. We'll talk about his aspirations, playing in the Deep South in Major League Soccer. It was a cracking week in MLS, by the way. Cracking week, for better or worse. So much meat on the bone. There was a lot to discuss. But we'll talk to Walker Zimmerman about his journey. And like and subscribe us here. Hit that, smash that like, subscribe button. So what we're going to do is we're going to rank the top 5 Americans in Europe. I think you'll have a pretty good idea what the list might look like at the top, but at the bottom, very different. Before we get into the top 5, I'm going to give you some of our, how do you call it, the next best. What is the word for it? Honorary, in consideration. Also receiving votes, which is a way I like to describe it as well. Let's start from a little bit off the grid. Taylor Booth, he started getting some games at Utrecht. What about in Serie B with Gianluca Busio, Tanner Tessman? Hopefully they can get promoted to the Serie A along with Nico Gioacchini and Como. I don't think it's going to happen because the Serie A, or the playoffs to Serie A, are a nightmare. Promotion and relegation isn't so cut and clean everywhere. Certainly not Serie B to Serie A. But those two guys had a great season. Joe Scally continues to develop. We had Luca Della Torre at Celta Vigo. He played 30 games. Johnny Cardoso, just 14 games for Real Betis, but he played everywhere down the stretch. He is going to have a monster year. Hopefully he has a big summer as well. Certainly could be when you think of the situation with Tyler Adams. And that comes to the next group of players. Tyler Adams, Gio Reyna, Tim Ream, Matt Turner, top players that we have. I guess Tim Weah to a lesser degree, that didn't play a lot, but are there in Europe and carving out a nice career for them. Well, we'll see. But they're still there. Look, if all these other players weren't there, back in the day, we would have gravitated for players being on the bench in the Premier League. So, or injured and playing in England. So this is no minor detail. So players like that, we also take into consideration. What about Cameron Carter-Vickers? Really turned it on? Playing for the soon-to-be Scottish champion Celtic. Going to throw himself into major consideration for selection for the Copa America. Maybe a chance to start. He's getting healthy at the right time. He's an absolute bull, and he's a guy I'd love to see in that starting 11. You had, I didn't have Yunus Musa in that top 5. He played 29 games in the Serie A. Started to come up, played 4 games in the Europa League. Not in the top 5. Malik Tillman, almost in my top 5. He played tons of Champions League games for PSV and Eindhoven. Ricardo Pepi. Josh Sargent, not in the top 5. Close. Now, Josh Sargent's an interesting one because I think I could get him into the top 5. He had, look, again, we're not complete here. There's a lot of big games yet to play, namely the promotion playoffs. Norwich is playing Leeds. They played their first game. It was a scoreless result. And Josh Sargent got injured. David Wagner, his manager, confident he can play in the second leg. We have our fingers crossed. If Josh Sargent can get Norwich into the Premier League, I might have to do addendum to this video and put him in the top 5, maybe 5A. Hopefully he plays. That's a big one there. Haji Wright, not going to get promoted with Coventry. 16 goals, 7 assists for Coventry City. Played a big role in an FA Cup semi. Was this close to playing in an FA Cup final? I mean, this is science fiction. I mean, I've gone through 12 players that are doing things we could have never considered. And it's happening. There's a lot of guys I'm not going to even mention because I just don't have enough time. I don't want to convolute things and muddy the waters too much. So you had that. Tim Way, as I said. Flo Balogun didn't have a great year at Monaco, but playing, if all the other players weren't there, we would be going, oh, Flo Balogun, excellent. We can't believe it. He is there. So this is just part of that long list of guys that are getting into the crosshairs here for top European clubs. And this is only going to grow because what was holding Americans back was the European outlook of American players. The American players were good enough, maybe not as good as they are now, but they were good a few years ago. But no one wanted to buy them because didn't trust the process, didn't trust the fact that American players could compete. But we could. And now everyone's like, uh-oh, what were we missing? There'd be gold in them hills. So they're turning away. Who did I miss here? I think I said to the majority of the players. So let's get into the top 5. It was a competitive top 5. And we will start at number 5. And at number 5, a guy I really wanted to put a little bit higher. Chris Richards. Chris Richards, Crystal Palace, the pride of Hoover, Alabama, really came on with this Crystal Palace team. He played 9 games last season. He played 25 here in 23-24, most of them down the stretch. I believe it was like 20 straight games by the end, something like that. They were unbeaten in their last 6. They beat Newcastle. They blew the doors off Manchester United. They beat Liverpool. Crystal Palace have been a fun watch. They went from Roy Hodgson to Olivier Glasner. And that's a great testament to Chris Richards that from manager to manager, he stayed as a featured player. We've said before in the past on this show, we have a shortage of good center backs. It's great to see Cameron Carter-Vickers come back into the mix. You know, Mark McKenzie, several others. But the bull of the woods is Chris Richards, breaking new ground. And next year is so exciting. He has some work to do. He's a young player to get a little more steel in him, to become a better leader. But those things he can get to. The pure skill, the pure attributes that he has where he just gets slotted in at 3-4 different positions for Crystal Palace show you that this is a very special talent. So I have him at number 5, Chris Richards. I wanted to put him a little bit higher because of the nature of the position. But the reality is the numbers put up by the guys in front of him, I couldn't thrust Chris Richards a little bit higher. But we keep an eye on center back. It is an essential position for us. And think if we didn't have Chris Richards right now. And I didn't mention Tim Ream, but he's still over there, even though he's not playing. Some of the old guard players still doing. But if there's no Chris Richards, I mean, some of these other guys are kind of replaceable. Not many. We're not very deep. We have guys there, but a lot of them are untested. Kevin Paredes is another one I didn't mention with what he's doing at Wolfsburg. So let's get to number 4, Serginho Dest. Some good news this week that after they weren't going to trigger it, PSV wasn't going to trigger the option on him. Now they're trying to do it, and why wouldn't they? Serginho Dest was amazing. 25 games, 2 goals in the Eredivisie, 10 Champions League games. Huge. It was a perfect fit. Lifted the trophy for the Dutch champions, along with Pepe, Tillman, and Ernie Stewart, who we had discovered last week can cut a rug real nice. He has great moves. I didn't doubt it for a second. Another great American success story. So Serginho Dest, hopefully it works out. I mean, you hate to see this it's a match. It's a perfect match. It's not going to get that at Barcelona. PSV and Serginho Dest, we're made for each other. So work it out. I know it's a big price tag, but look at those numbers. That's the kind of numbers you get. Are you serious about you're going back to the Champions League? You need all hands on deck. So hopefully that does it. But he was a solid number 4. I think the top 3, you all know who they are going to be. Maybe you don't. Anthony Robinson, just the sheer volume of production for him at Fulham, who didn't have a great year. They were in 14th place, didn't play in a lot of competitions. But Anthony Robinson, and again, the Premier League has one round to go, so they've played 37 games. He has played in 36 of them. 6 assists, 5 additional games in the League's Cup, where they had a little mini run for Fulham. Anthony Robinson is a plug, play, get to work, 36 games. And he's, 26? So the sky's the limit. We have heard the rumors of going to bigger clubs. I wouldn't be surprised for a minute if he's not with a Big Six club next season in the Premier League. He is going to be in demand just because of that, because he can put those kind of games under his belt. He is still young. He is getting better at crossing the ball, and he is just an elite athlete. Anthony Robinson, number 3 on the list. Number 2, Weston McKennie. Some would think he should be number 1. I'm not quite ready to put him there. 34 Serie A games. And this is still incomplete. I don't think he's going to move out of 2, but he has a Coppa Italia game. If Juventus win that, it's Fiorentina, right? If Juventus win that and they win a big trophy, that will help him. But he can't catch number 1. Weston McKennie, 7 assists, led the team, and played in those Coppa Italia games. But what he did in the Serie A, much like Serginho Dest, finding a club that just worked, that respected his talent and used him. Now, we are dealing with a contract situation for him as well. I believe common sense will win out here, much like the case of Serginho Dest, and Weston McKennie will remain a Juventus player. So there he is. I mean, you'd be crazy. Juventus still battling to secure Champions League. They will get there. The Serie A is going to have 5 Champions League teams. So it's going to, the Serie A did very well. They got all of the algorithms down where they're going to be viewed as a top league. And if you have more teams in those big competitions, the better chance you have to advance or possibly win one. So Weston McKennie, number 2. We all know who number 1's going to be. Christian Pulisic, the golden child. We were waiting for him to find the right club. You see a pattern here? And he found it. And it was finding a great manager, Stefano Pioli. I don't know if you saw the quote that we saw this weekend where he just waxed poetic on Pulisic, saying how perfect he is. We hope that the next manager at Milan will view Pulisic in a similar vein. I would imagine whoever the next manager isn't going to blow up that team because they were a clear second in the Serie A. There is some issues with Pioli, but the results were there. Disappointing with finishing 3rd in the Champions League and not advancing in the Europa League. Still decent. It's not like the bottom fell out. Much better than Juventus. Much better than Napoli. Much better than Roma. So, good work for Christian Pulisic. I think he'll be fine there. And now he gets a chance to grow. The numbers this weekend he added to it. So he has 14 goals, 12 in Serie A, 2 in the Europa League. He had 2 more against Cagliari. Beautiful goals. By the way, an incredible tradition, which I think Major League Soccer should imitate, where during Mother's Day weekend, the players put their mother's maiden name on the back of their shirt. Who wouldn't green light that? If you see a good idea, grab it. The Serie A won't be offended. This is about, cherishing your moms. But Christian Pulisic, he has found his perfect club. He is number 1 on the list with a bullet. I don't think we can talk about McKennie and Anthony Robinson giving him a race for the podium. There's no doubt about it. This was perfection for Christian Pulisic, finding not just the right club, but a massive club in AC Milan with a lot of room for growth. And what will the future hold is the exciting part. You saw, I mentioned about 18 names. Next year, I think they'll add 3 or 4 more. So many good young players looking to join that community overseas. And it's not just the quality of American players, it's the quantity. We have enough to send to Europe. We have enough to grow here in Major League Soccer. We have good ones in Liga MX, Brandon. This was a European list, but we had some really good ones playing in Mexico as well. It's all good news. Glad I could get this show under under the line before we start focusing on the summer. The Soccer OG, check out the Soccer OG podcast where you get all your podcasts. New one out this week with Walker Zimmerman. Like and subscribe us here, and I'll see you very soon. Look at that. I pressed my shirt just for you guys.